By accommodating for the challenges of dyslexic thinking, we can increase the dyslexic students' engagement with learning. This is about getting on the bridge so they don't have to travel as far. They don't have to use their energy just to be there, and about freeing up cognitive space so they can better learn and engage. In this section, we look at strategies to accommodate for their difficulties with short-term memory, ordering and sequencing of information, language processing, and the processing of verbal information. Using visuals support what you say when you give them verbal information. For example, write instructions as well as saying them. When you do give instructions, make them sequential and use bullet points. To help them further take in the information from the instructions, make connections for them by saying what resources they will need to complete the instructions. It may feel like you're doing all the work, but as the dyslexic student starts to relax and begins to understand the way it all works, they will start to pick it up easier. As always, give information in small chunks, little and often, and check in for the understanding by having them say back to you what they are doing. To support short-term memory, we want to think of firstly, not overloading their short-term memory, but then also we want to think about how do we apply strategies to make it easier for them to remember the material we're giving them. To reduce overload visually, you can physically limit the amount of material shown on a page at one time. This could be as simple as showing them how to use a blank page to cover the info on the page so they see it bit by bit, just like this. To reduce auditory overload, be aware of what noise is happening at the same time you are speaking to them. Minimize this as much as possible or be close to them when you're talking to them. When presenting verbal information, little and often. And limit how many words you use. Be succinct and to the point. Other strategies to help manage the information include giving visual references for completing tasks, such as giving them access to spelling words so that they can use them for their writing tasks, or giving them access to the times table so they can do their maths calculations. Or you could give them the steps needed to proof their work, so it's all written down or it's visual so they can refer to it. You want to be thinking, is short-term memory a barrier for them completing this task? And is there another way I can find out if they know this information? If you give verbal information, support it with a written reference, whether it's in words or pictures that they can refer back to you. Copying off a board, especially if they're not sitting front on, places a demand on their short-term memory. Let them take pictures of the board or give them the notes prior to the lesson so they've got a chance to look over them. Or you could have what you want them to write down on a piece of paper so they can place that piece of paper right beside them, so what they have to copy is from a far shorter distance. Be mindful in group work with discussions that the remembering the information that's discussed and holding that in mind and then having to wait before coming out with any response puts demand on short-term memory. Dyslexic thinkers need a lot of support seeing the steps. This is something they struggle to do with in their head, that ordering and sequencing of information. This is because they see the whole picture of something that's happened, and to pull bits of information out of this whole picture to put it in order is difficult. Templates and checklists provide those steps and a structure that helps them work through the steps needed. If they have something that they can look at, they can go back to it time and time again. Examples of these supports include templates, a video showing the steps, a diagram, or a list in bullet points. Having something to refer back to over time also means they will start to see the pattern of how to approach the tasks and can start to move away from visually having to see the template or visual support. Here is more of an example of how these supports make a difference. So this is just a picture here, and the picture at the top is showing all the thoughts and the ideas that dyslexics have going on in their head, the whole picture. So for example, if they had to write about what they did in the weekend, and they've got everything in there, they would remember everything that happened, how they felt, how others felt, what they remember seeing. And it's all there in one whole picture or movie. So pulling out a part of it, like where they start the story, is really difficult. They are expected to do that and then put the information down in an order so it flows and makes sense. And add to that, they have to think about their spelling, forming the letters when they're writing, and all this within a certain amount of time. We need to support dyslexics to sequence their ideas and thoughts and research externally as they struggle to do it easily in their heads. Strategies to support the sequencing include mind maps or bullet points. Writing in bullet points means there is less cognitive power needed to think what small words need to be added to make a sentence flow. Dyslexics think about this as fluff. It clogs their thinking when they have to do it. Fluff can also be the extra words that people use to give them information, and they have to sort through that fluff to understand what the important parts of that information are. Other sequencing strategies to help them include highlighting important information. And another one is helping them get the information out of their head. If dyslexics have too much information in their head, they become overwhelmed and overloaded. One process that works with this really well is using post-it notes. With this strategy, you may have to write the information down, but the idea is to write down everything that the dyslexic is thinking. So it's one idea or thought goes on one post-it note. You want to let this process flow. Don't stop them to ask them to explain a thought, and don't worry about the colour of the post-it notes being coordinated to the information being given. Once all the information is out of their head and down on the post-it notes, together you can start to do that sequencing and ordering of the information. You need to work out the headings that you want to order the information under. For example, if it's writing a story, it could be the first paragraph, second paragraph, etc. Or say it's research about animals. The headings could be the young, adult, reproduction, danger to habitat. And then those thoughts and ideas get moved under those headings. Sometimes these headings start to come out from the sorting of the info too. As the post-it notes of information get ordered, it's easier to see what information isn't relevant. This is because dyslexics can provide too much information sometimes and then find it hard to know where or what to take out. So these are some of the strategies that you can use to support their challenges with their dyslexic thinking when you're working with them in the classroom.